So now what we're doing is we're looking at the artist rendering. So this is what I saw. So as the sun, okay, so in the eclipse, and we're going to do a demonstration of this. So basically the eclipse is caused by the sun on the moon, the sun going around the earth. Okay, it goes around the earth, it goes around the earth. The earth is sort of, the earth kind of covers the moon here, right? Because the sun is over here. And as it comes around the earth, it lights the moon back up.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically the red, the moon being red is the earth's shadow on the moon plus whatever else causes that effect.
Yeah.
So as the sun came back to start lighting up the moon again, this is what I saw. Okay. What I saw was literally right here, there was a bright light to the left of the moon, and then the rays coming out like a star, and then white, and then this bleeded over around in a circle. Okay, in the shape of a circle, as if there's some kind of a black, as if there's some kind of space around the moon. This is what I saw with my eyes.
Looks like a pretty big space too. It wasn't close. It wasn't like, a trick of the eye.
Yeah, I could see it with my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I could see it with my eyes. And so it was a big enough space that I could perceive it visually. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what that is, but something.
Well, I mean, the hit that I get on this is twofold, and then you can express how you feel about it, but this is you've had a chance to look at it longer than I have. One is possibility that the moon has some sort of an atmosphere. We can see from our photographs and long distance telemetry that the moon does not have any naturally occurring vegetation, which would create an atmosphere similar to that of Earth. But could the moon have an artificially produced atmosphere or technologically produced atmosphere? We've been told that there is either a very thin atmosphere or no atmosphere on the moon, and that's why it's so beat up. So maybe you've caught something that we haven't been told about, which is pretty interesting. The second thing would be that there's either a light on the back of the moon, because the moon does not rotate. We never see the dark side of the moon, except in album form from Pink Floyd. So could there be some form of a light on the back of the moon? Possibly, or there's some form of craft emanating light hiding behind the moon. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's what went through my mind, is, first of all, it clearly at first I thought, oh my God, like it's like the atmosphere, that it's like the moon has an atmosphere, and it got highlighted by the light curving around. So then I immediately Googled that, and as you have stated, there's no atmosphere on the moon, and the exosphere on the moon is incredibly thin, is what we're told.
What is what we're told?
I don't know. So we're just looking for what could explain this this phenomena that I saw with my eyes.
Yeah.
Now, while you were talking, something else occurred to me. Now, of course, it could be like what you were just saying, that there's a light behind the moon. Well, I'm not sure what would cause that, but what might cause that actually is if there was something round and large to the side of the moon that reflected the sun's light. So it could either be some kind of a field an energetic field that's able to catch and reflect the light, like a type of a force field. It could be that there was something behind the moon that was large and spherical, like maybe it was a ship or something, that actually reflected the sun back. Maybe that could explain why there appeared to be a light behind the moon.
Or if there was a necessity for light on the dark side of the moon, which receives no light from the sun. So they've created some form of artificial light possibility. Because we're talking about an interesting story here, kids. We're just
talking about an interesting story
of
the moon and the eclipse. Yeah. Well, so actually, okay, so to what you're saying, if that's so, like, let's just roll with that for a little bit. If there's a full eclipse of the moon for some period of time, how does that affect the other side of the moon, right? Because the other side of the moon has certain conditions, and they usually involve the sun shining on the front of the moon that faces Earth. Okay. Mm-hmm. But what happens when maybe something happens to the backside of the moon during a full eclipse, where if there was life or something on the other side of the moon, they might need to make an adjustment during a full eclipse. Yeah.
It's interesting.
It is interesting. I really liked, in terms of interesting stories, the thing that I sort of was having fun playing with was, what if there was a large sphere, and it hid behind the moon, and it's behind the moon visually, and that it placed itself so that when the moon uneclipsed, there was a light reflection.
Yeah, I mean, that feels really interesting to me as well. I mean, where if you needed to be in close to the Earth, and let's just face facts, the moon is pretty close. That's in close, okay? Yeah. I mean, closer than that, you're in our, almost in our atmosphere. So it's in our beautiful neighborhood. We'll just put it that way. So if you needed to be in close to the Earth, and there's no other place to play hide and seek but behind the moon, correct? I mean, you can hide behind a cloud, but that's maybe way too close for something that's large enough to show up behind the moon. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because it seems to be almost bigger than the moon.
Yeah, though it does. And okay, so let's roll with this interesting story. Okay. So if that's the case, what you just described, we're having fun here. Yeah. If that's the case, then maybe during lunar eclipses, there are shenanigans where a ship may want to be closer to the Earth, sort of to keep an eye on what's going on.
Well, we do scientific observation all the time. If it's interesting to us, and our physicists and astrophysicists are, pointing telescopes and taking pictures, and it's really cool, and it's a scientific study, why couldn't that be occurring outside in instead of inside out as well?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. If there's scientists of a ET or galactic nature, or humans, I don't know, using advanced technology, I don't know if they have spheres. But the other thing I would say is that, now this is just me. I know a lot of people are very into the moon, but when the moon is devoid of the sun, I always feel a little bit. I don't feel that great, I have to say. When the sun is present with the moon, then I'm fine. But I always feel, even on August 21st, 2018, when the moon covered the sun, I felt the energies were just really unusual. So, there might be energies at play that are non-physical that we're having a presence to monitor that might be helpful also. I guess I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of rituals are
I
done
mean,
during eclipses and things.
we're
So.
both extremely sensitive
And we
to
are.
earth and atmospheric energies.
Yeah.
So I would say absolutely during large phases, we'll just put it that way,
Yeah.
that it does feel sometimes overwhelming. I would even put it to that point.
Yes.
And the invitation is always just to take care of self, to ground, and drink plenty of water.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's funny too, because like during what we would consider the black moon phase, which is after you're done with the moon cycle before you start the crescent moon. Some would call it the Lilith phase or the black moon or balsamic phase. Balsamic obviously being dark. That the energy seems to be a little lighter, more dreamy. So it is interesting that the more full on the moon is, what do they call it? Lunacy. They don't call it lunacy for no reason.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
it's a really ancient term for craziness.
Yeah.
So
there's some effect there.
What your thoughts are on the origin of the moon, there's no disregarding the fact that its energy and its pull does create certain things on Earth. The tides, and plant roots actually grow stronger during certain moon phases. Farmers actually plant their seeds during certain moon cycles to give them the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
the moon is a good thing.
It is. I always look at it with one eyebrow raised, but okay. we because we have different energies that we're looking at it from our histories.
Exactly.
So let's look at the third interesting story, which is about the atmosphere. Like, what if there was an atmosphere, and when the sun came around, it met the edge of an atmosphere or a much stronger exosphere than we're aware of, and boom, just lit it up. Is that possible? Or is there a force field around the moon?
It wouldn't be the same type of atmosphere that we're talking about here on Earth. I mean, we have, all the way up to the stratosphere, varying degrees of oxygen and water vapor. And most of that is created because we have chlorophyllc plant life, which means it's green and it can convert carbon dioxide in the presence of water and sunlight into oxygen and polysaccharides, which is another term for sugar. So we have these great, amazing biological beings who produce our atmosphere. And that atmosphere also contains water vapor. There is no data or visual ability to see any type of biological systems on the moon that are similar. So if there is an atmosphere, what created it? Because we do not see the cause and effect of biology playing out on the planet. So that is a very interesting story. If there is an atmosphere, what is it made of? Is it, created through technology? Is it created naturally through some form of system that we are not yet aware of? I would be very interested to see how that plays out.
Yes. Yeah. Or a stronger exosphere than we're told.
Yes.
And it would seem like if that was the case, just, what I hear you saying is it would have to be generated internally. It has to be generated from within the moon outward.
And listen, there is a tremendous amount of microscopic plant life on this planet, in our oceans. Algae creates a tremendous amount of the oxygen that percolates up out of the seawater. We do not see any water evident on the surface of the moon. That's not to say, I mean, that there isn't something on the inside that then percolates out through the subsoil or the surface of the moon. We need to do a little bit more study and actually physically be there to determine that. But it is an interesting thing.
Yes.
If there's an environment that's gaseous and that actually through gravitation and magnetism is staying with the moon, that indicates a whole new level of understanding that will be interesting to see play out.
Be. And so this brings us to the fourth possibility. What if it's like a force field? So what if there's a force field around the moon and it got lit up and then the light curved around it, curved around the edge of that force field as the sun, started to come around the Earth.
Now, there are a couple of actual scientific facts that play into what you're talking about. First of all, the moon doesn't rotate.
Yeah.
So why doesn't the moon rotate like every other celestial body that we're aware of? Okay. Second of all, it is not an elliptical orbit around the Earth. It is in a circular orbit. So that indicates a very strong magnetism that literally has locked the moon in place around the Earth. So it's not turning, it's just staring back at the Earth.
Unless it moves under its own power. I don't know. Is that too far-fetched? Since we're talking about an interesting story.
Science here. Hello. I can only work within the constructs that I know. All right, we're applying science and biology to something that appears to be a celestial body.
Yes, yeah.
It's even more interesting to think about it as a non-celestial body, but
that's a fun story.
To talk to the idea of a force field.
Yes.
And an object within a force field or a tractor beam has limited ability to move and can present at an exact distance based on what the force is. Say you took a string and you tied a ball to a string, like on one of those games where you play the tether ball. It can only swing based on, certain mass and velocity, all those physics equations. So you have a radial distance and it will just go around and around. Where the points are attached, that's the only point that can face. So through centrifugal force, it goes around and around and around. I've gotten a little bit off topic here, but basically that's what we would see if there was a force field.
Yes. 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 Unless there was a force field on a ship behind the moon that got lit up rather than an atmosphere or exosphere or force field around the moon.
Did I go off on a tangent unneeded, unnecessarily there? Sorry.
I don't know. It's fine. I actually, I was enjoying your physicsy discussion. So these are all possibilities, right? All we're saying is that I saw something with my eyes, and we have 4 sort of interesting stories of what could have caused that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we don't know what caused it.
This anchors our basic premise, and Solaris has been sharing this for a long time. If you see something, or you feel intuited to take a picture, and you see something really cool, talk to your friends about it, or send it into the blog, because we would love to see other people's pictures or video. Because the more we spread this and say there's interesting stuff going on, it really supports the community of people who are interested in this stuff. So I think
it's interesting to be able to capture something physically and visually. Okay, so I this is something I saw with my eyes. Sometimes we're able to capture photographic evidence. We do have a little bit of photographic as evidence that there was this extraordinary light to the left of the moon in my photograph, although it's not as clear as what I saw with my eyes. But I think it's important, for the advancement of ourselves and our ideas and as a culture, to be willing to say, to be able to just be willing to say, let's brainstorm about everything that it could be. And over time, data will be collected by scientists who look at these things. But it's got to be brought up. It's got to be brought up for us to know that, there might be something more to a story. And when the evidence is something that we can perceive with our human senses, that just gives more of a real feeling to the experience, powering that desire to know why and what is up there and what's going on.
Yeah, and that plays into the mind being able to take in more data points that can sometimes completely shift the experience and the knowledge. Okay, so as a student of biology, I always say, well, this is where we're at now. More data points may become available, and then we're going to have to reevaluate. So we should always be reevaluating. In fact, we've played with photographs that we looked at, a year ago now, and seeing even more things before in some of the videos that we've done. So
yes.
It's wonderful.
So
are you going to play with your experiment now?
Yes. Now we have a show and tell where I'm going to illustrate with objects and light what I experienced happening.